It's fast, it's funny, it's the CW's Dynasty. Here are my top 10 moments from the second episode. Number 1. We don't get any titles. I'm not sure if that's going to be coming up down the pipeline when they've got us hooked in and they can trust us to stay with it through the titles. But they did have a cover version of Duran Duran's Notorious. I couldn't track down who it was, but it was really beautiful. So the camera sort of pans down on the amazing looking Carrington estate. Everything's in chaos because Claudia disrupted the wedding with the announcement that Matthew had been killed. Number 2. Blake's attempt at keeping his family in line. So there's a panic. Matthew worked for the company. What is the company's liability? And you have Blake calls a family meeting and they're in the room together discussing what they should do. He sends out the lawyers because, Fallon's kicking off. And Blake's trying to get everyone to march to the same beat. Well, all Fallon can do is bait Crystal. She's still pissed off that she hasn't got the COO position. She turns to Crystal and says, I feel for you, Crystal, having to take on so many roles in the same day. Wife, mistress, widow, or are you going to leave that scrap for Claudia? Blake loses it, and this is the favourite moment, number 2. He hurls his glass that he's drinking from into the fireplace. And Stephen and Fallon don't even flinch. Love it! Number 3, we get soap opera classic, we get flashbacks. We don't get your traditional, flashbacks with lines, wavy lines going down the screen. We get these rather pretty kind of concentric circles. So the first flashback happens at the press conference. Blake has Crystal do the announcement to the press about Matthew, which seems particularly cruel. She was the PR person before she was COO, so it kind of makes sense, but it still seems very cruel. Flashing lights, lots of questions. Her flashback is her and Matthew entwined and Matthew whispering in her ear that he loves her. We get flashback number 2 later in the episode when Crystal has been sent home to collect all the trinkets, all the mementos she has of her time with Matthew, because everybody has to clear any connection to Matthew that isn't business, so that they don't get tied up in this murder investigation. So she's gone back to her old house, she's going through the mementos and she comes across a jumper of his and she pulls the jumper into her face and inhales, and we get a flashback, and it's her and Matthew's cute meet. So they're in an office, they bump into each other, she spills her coffee on herself and he gives her his jumper and introduces himself. The third flashback comes during Matthew's funeral. Crystal gets all teary, walks off. She has a flashback to when she says to Matthew, why didn't you tell me? Clearly finding out that he's married. And he says, I didn't tell you because I'm going to leave her. And he goes on to say, life is complicated, lies are easy. Which, while true, seems a little tough. I'm not sure if this is any consolation for Crystal. I mean, it's not exactly what you want to hear when you find out that your boyfriend is actually married. Number 4, Fallon is seriously channeling Alexis with her breakfast outfit. She's got a kind of headband that looks a bit like a turban. She's wearing a black kimono that is swathed in gold thread. Looks fantastic. Number 5. Breakfast conversation at the Carrington mansion. After Fallon's been particularly cruel about Crystal's failure at the press conference the day before, Stephen says to her, do you have a cactus where your heart should be? To which Fallon says, what's got up your ass this morning? Then Sam, Crystal's nephew, walks into the dining room and Fallon shrugs her shoulder and says, never mind. Number 6. We get a really odd moment that kind of feels like a Chekhov's gun situation. So when Crystal is back at her house collecting the mementos, she hears that somebody's come into the house. So she grabs the first thing she finds, which is a hairspray bottle. Nice, particular 80s moment, because she doesn't seem to have too much hairspray in her hair. So she grabs this hairspray and holds it out like it's mace. And the intruder turns out to be Anders. Anders' response to this is just to say that hairspray is a much better weapon when it's been set aflame. And Crystal says, good to know, and then turns and places the hairspray behind her, on the counter behind her. And right next to where she places the hairspray is a lighter. That's seriously coming back around again. I don't know who's gonna get it, but somebody's gonna get. Fallon gets some serious costume changes, and that is where we are with number 7. First off, what I would call a bum bag, what I think Americans call a fanny pack. She wears one, kind of quilted looking leather, but she wears it round on the front. Elizabeth Gillies is gorgeous, young and divine. She could wear that bum bag any which way she liked, and I'm sure she'd make it look good. Later in the episode, she gets the pointiest of shoulders in a meeting she has with Jeff Colby. So it looks like a sort of distressed Chanel kind of biker jacket, but the shoulder pads come out to a really nice point. It is awesome. I love that jacket. Then her suitable attire for the funeral was some kind of tuxedo jacket jumpsuit, because at every funeral you should have a plunging neckline, you should have most of the skin on your legs showing, and a floppy hat. And did you notice the veil? Very impressed. It was a really nice touch. It was just kind of crumpled around the top of her hat. Love it. Number 8. Fallon has a serious Lannister moment. We have a bit of a wink to Game of Thrones when Fallon is in the limousine with Michael the driver, and shall we say she is rising up, shall we say, from giving him some pleasure? Is that how we'll describe it? So she turns to Michael and said, "Never let it be said that a Carrington doesn't pay their debts fully." I loved it. It really made me laugh. That was a good moment. Number 9. At the funeral, we get a lead-in with Bronski Beats. Well, it was a cover of Bronski Beats' Small Town Boy, which is just a fantastic song. We get a bit of a to-do with Crystal and Fallon. Surprise, surprise. So Crystal's wandered off to have a private moment. The funeral's going on behind, and Fallon walks in, still super pissed about the whole CEO thing. She just wants Crystal gone. She sort of lifts the glasses off Crystal's face, which somehow feels really aggressive. And it's gonna kick off. Do you know how we know? Because that veil has been pulled down and is now over the brim and over Fallon's eyes. She doesn't have a shred of feeling for Crystal. You know you're not the star of this Lifetime movie. That role belongs to his actual wife. Ooh, harsh. Harsh. Crystal is very gentle in her response to this. She just says, you know, you've led such a shallow life, and basically points out that she doesn't know anything. Fallon just keeps on coming with the hits and says it must be really hard to know that Matthew chose brain damage over damaged goods. I can see now why you're crying. Crystal just begins to walk away, and as she passes Fallon, we cut from a close-up to a wide shot, and she just pushes Fallon, who falls into an open grave, and it is really funny. And as she is walking away, you just hear this voice saying, "Bitch, you're gonna wish you buried me." It was really funny. It caught me completely by surprise. It really made me laugh. Number 10. We get the cliffhanger. It has to be the cliffhanger. Well, it should be the cliffhanger always, and the first 2 cliffhangers have been great. So we have, everybody's back at the Carrington mansion. We have a nice little moment between Stephen and Sam, and they have a bit of a snog. And then Blake and Fallon arrive. So everybody's together. Anders comes in and says, we have a bit of a situation. The situation turns out to be a flank of FBI people in their jackets, and they say they have come from Mr. Carrington. And they walk straight past Blake and cuff Stephen. And it's so fast that it cuts straight from the cliffhanger straight through to the previews, and the first line is, "I've been charged with murder. No, I can't go to an 80s dance party." I love it. Great. So I'm enjoying it. It is making me laugh. It feels like it knows what it is, and it's having a lot of fun, and I think Elizabeth Gillies is particularly having a lot of fun. So roll on, episode 3.
I knew we weren't that ugly. I knew it.